What is going on, Raiders? Soda Dragon here. Welcome and hope you guys are doing well. So today's video is going to be a fun one. We're going to do a little myth busting today. So some of you guys might have seen my previous video on Ukko being overhyped. Remember what I said? I said he's solid. Everyone should fuse him if you have the resources. And yeah, I do think he's overhyped. Yes, it's possible for a champ to be overhyped and solid at the same time. And of course, I'm going for him. If you have the resources, it's a no-brainer. Fuse him. So today I wanted to address some of the issues raised in that video, and one in particular we're actually going to test out. So one of my main points in this video was that this dude is not stealing enough buffs. I mean, a lot of people say that's the best thing about him, his buff stealing, and when he steals it, it's protected, but it just didn't seem like he was stealing enough. So the first issue people were taking with my video is that somehow I'm not understanding the skill description well enough. Now guys, you need to realize there are a lot of different ways people are reading the skill description. It's not just like two ways to read this. There are multiple ways. A lot of people are interpreting this description in very different ways. So with regard to any differences in reading this skill or how to understand it, for me personally, that is an issue on Plarium. So if we players have discrepancies in how we read something, it's not our fault because we didn't decide the description. So anytime there are differences in how to read something, it's Plarium's fault, in my opinion. It's not like we, the players, voted on a certain description. They completely decided all the wording for themselves. So if there are multiple ways to read something, if there's some vagueness, some ambiguity in it, it's not our fault. It's Plarium's. And no, Plarium has not commented or clarified on which is the correct way to read this description out of the multiple ways there are to read this. So second issue that people, I think, are conflating or confusing with this first issue is, are you actually impressed with what you are actually seeing with your own eyeballs? So guys, for a moment, let's just forget what the absolute correct understanding of this description is supposed to be. Just forget about it for a second. This guy's supposed to steal buffs. Okay, let's test him. So my question is he stealing buffs at a rate that is impressive to you or not? Is what you're seeing with your eyeballs telling you like, wow? Or, that's not that impressive. For me, testing Ukko and his buff stealing, I was not impressed, and that has nothing to do with the definition here. He's supposed to steal buffs at some rate. We don't know. Plarium hasn't commented. At some rate or another, he's supposed to steal buffs. What I saw with my own eyeballs was not impressive to me. And that's the thing. You guys decide for yourselves. Maybe what you saw in my video was super impressive to you, and that is completely fine. Okay, but for me personally, no, I was not impressed. So remember guys, this is a separate issue from how to read this description correctly. That is what you see with your own eyeballs impressing you or not. It wasn't impressing me, but that's the thing. You have to be honest. I already told you this. I told you, you guys should fuse him. He's a solid champ. I said that multiple times, even though I wasn't impressed with his buff stealing ability. That's okay. It's not all or nothing. It's not like a guy is completely 100% OP meta changer or crap. There's a lot of people in the middle that can help out a lot of players. This guy's absolutely solid. He just doesn't steal buffs that often enough for me. And guys, the last thing I want to talk about was a sort of defense for Ukko's buff stealing rate. So here's the defense. Well, you already buffed Ukko with those buffs that he could have stolen. And if he already has the buffs, of course he's not going to steal it, right? He only steals buffs if he doesn't have them. So if you're buffing him up, of course he's not going to steal because he's already buffed. So firstly guys, just to be honest, this sounds a little suspect because look, there's nothing in the description that says, well, if Ukko has a certain buff, then he can't steal that same buff. There's nothing here, right? Well, maybe that's the way all buff stealing works, some of you guys might say, right? In general, that's how it works. If someone already has a buff, then they can't steal that very same buff. The thing is, Ukko is not the first buff stealing champ in this game. And no, buff stealing doesn't work like this. There is no cap on buff stealing or no stoppage on buff stealing if that champ already has that same buff he's gonna steal. Now I know some of you guys might already know this, that you can steal whatever buff there is, whether you're buffed or not. But some of you newer players might not know this. It might kind of sound true. Well, of course, if you have the buff, then you can't steal that buff. So I'm gonna show you that's false. So guys, here's gonna be our test, and we're gonna use Mashalt here. He has a 100% chance to steal buffs in one of his skills, and it's all buffs. Okay, so when it's booked, 100% chance to steal all buffs from a single target. So here we're gonna steal Steel Skulls right in the middle, his increased defense. He has a strong version increased defense. Now notice Mashalt here already has that strong version increased defense on him from Sifi. So the question is, can he steal the same buff? He already has that on him, notice. Well, let's see. Can he steal that buff that he already has? Going for that Steel Skull in the middle. You see that steel buff? And yes, he stole that buff. Steel Skull does not have that increased defense buff anymore. And you saw the words. It said steel buff, right? So there you go. Now I know what some of you guys are saying. Well, yes, you can steal a buff even if you have that same buff, if the duration of the buff you have is less than that of the buff you're trying to steal. So your Mashold had a 1-turn increased defense, and you were stealing a 2-turn increased defense. So yes, he can steal that, but if he had a 2-turn increased defense, then he would not be able to steal a 2-turn increased defense because it wouldn't override it. Oh, really? Okay, let's test it. Now what do we got? Look at Mashold. What is the duration of his increased defense? 2 turns. And what's the duration of the increased defense he's going to steal? 2 turns. So now we're not in the situation where Mashold has only 1 turn of increased defense, but he's trying to steal 2 turns of it, right? It's the same durations. Can he steal it? Well, let's see. You saw a steel buff, right? That means he stole the buff. So things are not looking good for those who are trying to excuse Ukko's buff stealing rate by saying he already had the buff. That's why he didn't steal it. It seems like stealing buffs is completely irrelevant to what buffs you currently have. But just in case any of you guys are wondering, what if Mashold had a higher duration buff than the one he was trying to steal? What if he had a 3 duration increased defense? Could he steal that 2 duration increased defense? Because maybe that's why he wasn't stealing enough buffs, because his duration of his buffs were actually higher than that of those he was trying to steal. Oh, really? Okay, let's test that out too. Notice here, Mashold has 3 turns of increased defense, and he's trying to steal a 2-turn duration increased defense. Can he do it? Can he do it? Let's see. And steal buff. Guys, stop trying to make excuses for Ukko's buff stealing. He doesn't steal that many buffs. That's not his strength, but he is solid. You guys get that, right? I don't know how many times I have to say that. He is solid. He is worth fusing. He just doesn't steal that many buffs. Let's be honest. I am fusing a character. I'm choosing of my own free will to fuse a character that doesn't steal that many buffs, and that's okay because the rest of his kit is pretty darn good. So I hope this was a fun session of myth busting for you guys. And if you guys had any honest questions about this, well, now you know. The proof is in the pudding. Yes, you can steal buffs you already have. Whatever buffs you have are irrelevant to what you steal. So do yourself a favor and fuse Ukko because he's a good champ. And let me know what you guys think of all this in the comments. So thanks for watching. And if you guys haven't yet, like, subscribe, and share. Turn on all notifications. Stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.